Hey, well, good morning, and thanks for being here again this morning. We are in this series called Forward Living, and really been talking about what it means to move forward. We started a new year. We're already halfway through it, and well over halfway through it. So I don't know how you feel, but I feel like I don't know if I'm making any progress. I am so grateful, though, for this church and the people that serve here every Sunday. I don't take time usually to say that, but there's a lot of people that work behind the scenes. We've got new camera operators today, and I love them. So I love our camera operators. If you ever wanted to operate a camera, go for it. It's harder than it looks because I do this sort of thing, and then like they can't keep up, but they're doing pretty good. So I'm happy for that. But we're just grateful for just people that serve here around here all the time. Let me ask you a question. What does your normal day look like? I'll give you a glimpse of what our day looks like. We'll get up. Cheryl gets up early, and we go to work. We do whatever we do during the day, and then we kind of come home, and we stare at the fridge. We open the fridge, and then we stare at the pantry, and then we try to figure out what we're going to do for dinner, and then you end up eating like a bowl of cereal, a handful of Wheat Thins, a bag of chips, and a hot dog, and you call it good, right? And then so at some point in time, you clean up what mess you've made in the kitchen. This is what our house looks like. And then we kind of settle in for the evening, and, Cheryl always gets the couch. I never get the couch. I don't know why, but that's just the way it works at our house. I just pretty much get what's left in the living room. I get the crappy chair. And so we've got a lot of those. And so I just get what's left. But we settle in, and we maybe turn the TV on and watch some TV. And then something phenomenal happens at our house. Rachel and Cheryl's got the couch. Rachel gets the other good chair, and I get the crappy chair. And then something phenomenal happens. It's crazy, but we have these dogs that we live with that I did not want. I was adamantly opposed, and Cheryl was determined that, no, we need a little dog. And so we went and got these dogs. We got these 3 dogs that live in our house, and they're little bitty, and they're yappers. Everything about them drives me nuts. And so we made the decision to bell train these dogs. Everybody know what that means? Like, you get a little bell hanging from your door, and when they got to go out and do their business, they go ring the bell. And what happens at our house is the dogs incessantly ring the bell. Like, incessantly ring this stupid bell. And I don't know what happens, but like Rachel and Cheryl about 8 o'clock go deaf. They can no longer hear the bell. Like, y'all don't hear that? Nope. Cheryl's just moving. Cheryl ain't about to uncover that blanket that she's got and get out and let that dog out. So I just spend my evenings up and down letting these dogs that I did not want out. I feel like the kid on the Polar Express. I'm the only person that can still hear the bell ring in our house. Like, Cheryl cannot. And then we just, Cheryl falls asleep at 8:15, and everybody's comfortable, and we get up and do it all over again. Anybody have a similar life like that? You ever feel like your life is just like, it's like Groundhog Day? Like, you just get up, you do the same things over and over and over, and there's really nothing new, and there's nothing exciting. And but there's something about it that's comfortable, right? Like, we're comfortable. We love, and there's this thing about like Americans in general. We love the idea of being comfortable. In fact, American culture is so in love with this idea of being billions of dollars are spent and earned every year to make us more comfortable. Did you know that? And we are. Let me ask you a question. What's the hardest thing that you've ever accomplished in your life? What is it? You don't have to speak it out. I don't know what that is for you, whether it's climb a mountain, maybe you went to college and education and you finally finished it and you feel like you were ever going to be done and you finally got through it, but you got on the other side and it was painful. Maybe it was actually something physical. Maybe you ran a 5K. Why you would want to do that, I have no idea. I have no interest in that. Zero interest in running a 5K. Maybe you climbed a mountain. I did kind of do that. That was cool. It was painful. Thought I was going to die the first day. Maybe you beat cancer. I don't know what it is. I don't know what that is in your life that you've accomplished in your life. But I'm willing, if I was a betting person, I was willing to bet or willing to assume that probably came with a little bit of pain, whatever that was in your life. You overcame grief. You did something. There was some moment in your life that you had to walk through that was incredibly difficult, and it was painful. And it was painful for people around you. And it was just not, it was anything but comfortable. Does anybody remember doing that? Has anybody had anything like that in their life? I guarantee we all have. I don't care how old or young you are this morning, you have walked through something or accomplished something and have come out on the other side of something that has been incredibly painful. And because of that, because you went through that, there is progress in your life. You moved a little bit forward. And so I think when we're talking about this forward living, and we're in January 2024, January 2024 is almost over. How much have you accomplished? How much have you moved forward in your walk with Jesus, or what you hope to accomplish this year? Well, I want to talk about that a little bit more, and I want to kind of dig into this idea of comfort and pain. And I think before you determine whether you're going to live forward and how you're going to live forward, I think you have to determine where you're at. Cheryl and I did some Christmas shopping, like in person. Anybody do that anymore? I don't know. We actually went to a store. Like the Amazon guy came to our house a lot, but we actually had a few things that we want to go pick up, and so we're like, oh, let's go. I don't like going. We went to Carbondale. Has anybody been in the Carbondale Mall lately? No lie, there were tumbleweeds blowing down. Like I think there were like 3 stores in Carbondale Mall. It was just like a ghost town. But I just remembered when the malls were bumping, and you go to a big mall and they have this giant map that's in there, or you go to an amusement park and you find the map in the mall and you figure out where you want to go, and there's a little red dot that says what? You are here, right? You're right here. This is where you are on the map. And so I think before we can determine where we're headed or how we're going to make improvements or grow in our faith or our journey with Jesus, we have to have an honest take an honest look about where we are. And so I've been stuck in, over the last several weeks, we've been talking about this story that is outlined in Isaiah, the prophet Isaiah. And the prophet Isaiah was really just talking about like the Israelites, these Jews, and I'll try to catch you guys up if you don't know anything about this. The Jewish culture in the first century, their city got taken over by the Babylonians. The Babylonians came in and just leveled the place, burnt the temple, tore the walls down. Every city had a wall at that time. It was the way that you stayed safe from people. And so the Babylonians came in and just wiped out the city of Jerusalem, burnt the temple down, just destroyed everything, leveled everything, and took these Israelites captive, and they were captive of the Babylonians for about 50 years, okay? And then we get to, and they held these captives for 40 or 50 years, and until someone had the courage, there was an individual that had the courage and the motivation that was motivated by the heartbreak of what had happened to his people, that made a decision to go back to Jerusalem and rebuild the city. And that individual's name was Nehemiah. And you can read the story of Nehemiah in the book of Nehemiah. And so honestly, when you first open the book of Nehemiah and you start reading this story, it tells you how he was gripped with heartbreak over what had happened to Jerusalem. He was so heartbroken and so burdened for what he saw happening in his world and in his society and the time that he lived in history, that he was motivated to do something about it. Like he didn't just go to the coffee shop and get a coffee and like, boy, this world's really gone to pot. Like, I can't believe what happened to Jerusalem. Can you believe we would ever be there at this place? He was motivated to actually do something about it. And so he formed this team to go back and rebuild the walls of Jerusalem and start with the walls, because they had to start with them first so they wouldn't get raided and everything. So, but before he did that, and so Nehemiah did, he got people together and rounded up a group, and they went back to Jerusalem and they were going to start rebuilding the wall. And he had a group of people that were with him. There were a group of people that said, yeah, you know what, I'm down for that. Let's do something about it. Let's start rebuilding this thing. Let's make a difference in with our people and with the culture that we live in. And so here's what he did. But before he did that, he got them all together, and I love it. It's recorded here in Nehemiah. Let me find it. But it's in verse 17, and it says this. Here's what he said. But now I said to them, so Nehemiah, they decided they're going to go back, rebuild the walls, they're going to start doing this. He's talking to these group of people. He's like, and here's what he said to them. He's like, but now I said to them, you know very well what trouble we are in. Jerusalem lies in ruins, and its gates have been destroyed by fire. Let us rebuild the wall of Jerusalem and end this disgrace. Pretty cool. And then verse 18, he said, then I told him about how the gracious hand of God had been on me and about my conversation with the king. Nehemiah had gone to his king and said, hey, I'm going to go back. I need some resources and people. I'm going to go rebuild the city. The king was like, okay, you go do you, because he was actually a cupbearer for the king, Xerxes. And he said, then they replied at once, let's go rebuild the wall. So they began this good work. Now, I read part of that last week and the week before, same verse. But what I love about this is that I think there comes a time, he had to get these people together and take a good hard look about where they were. Let me ask you this. Have you ever stared at yourself in the mirror? Anybody? Just a good hard long look at yourself? Anybody? Sometimes it's not pleasant. Sometimes you stand there in your birthday suit and you're like, man, this is really bad. I've let this go too far. My body lies in ruins. That's kind of where we are. Let me ask you another question. Have you ever, or had anyone ever show you an old picture of yourself? You ever look at an old picture? Have anybody ever done that? Everybody go back and look at a picture, like an old picture of yourself when you were younger and go, wow, what were you thinking? Has anybody ever done that? I'm going to share one with you. My brother, the golden child, Chris, he loves to share this picture on Facebook, and he shares it every year on my birthday. But here's my picture. I know. Talk about a glow up, right? I mean, seriously, the glow up is real. That is brutal. I think everyone should bring a photo in, and we're going to share yours, okay, next week. But at some point in time, I looked at that in the mirror and thought, man, you got to do something, right? You cannot go out in public like that. At some point in time, I made a decision, maybe the hair needs to change. Maybe I need to get some braces. Maybe even my parents looked at me and said, we got to get this kid some braces. His teeth, I don't know. I had a quack of a dentist when I was a kid. But anyway, pulled all my teeth. Oh, that's a different story. But at some point in time, you have to take a good, honest look at where you are in the mirror, spiritually, and in your relationship with Jesus Christ. And you have to be honest with yourself. And every now and then, you make some changes. Most of us have done that. I think if we had a picture of everybody and we looked at you then and now, it'd be like, okay, wow, glow up. Wow, you made some changes. Changed your hair, you did some things differently. Now, every now and then you'll run into those people that are just stuck. Have you ever run into those people? You're like, wow, it's like an 80s times capsule. Still got their hair parted. It's still doing the things that they've always done, and they've just not made any changes. And you meet those people and you're like, yeah, I ain't gonna do it. And that's cool, you do you, but they just haven't made any changes. There's been no progress. They're kind of stuck in neutral. So every now and then you run into that, and you run into those people. But we have to recognize that perhaps, maybe, if we're honest with ourselves, when you look at yourself in the mirror, spiritually speaking, that maybe you're a little stagnant. If you're really honest, there hasn't been a lot of growth in your walk with Jesus. You were saved, maybe you were saved a long, long time ago, and you come to church every Sunday and you give, but really there's not been any kind of growth. In fact, maybe you're starving for it. You want progress, but there's just nothing there. And we took a good heart. Nehemiah was the guy that made the decision to go back and do something about the condition of Jerusalem. And he took a good, honest look at the map of where they were, and he laid it out. He didn't sugarcoat it. He didn't make any excuses for why it happened in the first place or why they were where they were. He was completely honest about the needs of his people, and he didn't underestimate the need. The need is real. This is bad. It's just as bad as it gets for Jerusalem. It was the cold, hard facts, and it was a mess, and it was going to take a ton of effort and a ton of pain to change it. And so Nehemiah decided, now this is really important. If you hear nothing else that I say, listen to this. Nehemiah, at that point in time in Jerusalem's history, decided, he weighed it all out, and there was going to be a cost associated with making a change. And quite honestly, there's a cost with doing nothing. But Nehemiah decided that the cost of doing nothing was far greater than the cost of progress. It's going to be painful. If we, and the fact of the matter is, and the reality of this is, this story, what do we learn from it? What do we get from it? Okay, that's a cool story, Trent. What do you do with that? The fact of the matter is, we are all sitting in this room and watching online this morning, and you're going to fall into one of two categories. You're going to fall into the do nothing category and just keep running your life back the way it's always ran. You're going to do nothing. You're just going to stay content and comfortable. You'll take no risk or no action. You'll just be safe. And that's okay. But there's a cost to that. Or maybe in 2024, you've decided, I'm going to do something different. The cost of me doing nothing and running this back the same every year and expecting a different result is not getting me to where I want to be. So you're going to try something new. You're going to lean into a grow group. You're going to make a difficult decision at some point in time. You're going to risk everything. You're going to change your friends. You're going to change your eating and exercise habits. You're going to commit to a relationship with Jesus Christ. You're going to commit to serving maybe the first time in your life, and you're going to experience what living forward looks like. And it's going to be painful. But you're going to experience something amazing. The thing about progress is, and I don't know if you've noticed this, but progress always has, have you ever made a decision to do something and then one of your friends or your family or people that are close to you go, I don't know if that's a good idea. Man, that's kind of risky. You shouldn't do that. I don't think you're going to be able to accomplish that. We as people, we are always going to have those people around us that are naysayers. Does anybody know the college football player that wore the shirt this year? It says Lank. He just wore a shirt that said L-A-N-K. What that stood for is let all naysayers know, basically is what was an acronym. In other words, he wasn't going to listen to the people. And Nehemiah was no different. And I want to continue to read part of this story. Anybody ever watch Saturday Night Live skits every now and then? Every now and then I run into one, and I was going to show a clip of one, but there was one that I love. It's the Debbie Downer. Does anybody know Debbie Downer Saturday Night Live? So the Debbie Downer Saturday Night Live skit, if you don't know what that is, it's basically like a group of people. They're out having a good time, having dinner, and then there's this one girl that's always at the table, and she always throws out some kind of fact that just kills the vibe. Has anybody ever done, that? Like they're having a good time one of the clips is they're at Disney World with their family, and they're having this great time, and everybody's happy and sharing things, and they're at breakfast, and the guy's like ordering steak and eggs, and then Debbie Downer speaks up and is like, boy, steak and eggs, I'd really have it. That causes mad cow disease, and it's going to get in your brain, and you're going to die. And it was like, okay, thanks for that, Debbie. Nehemiah had those people. Whenever you make a decision to do something that is outside of your ordinary or outside of your comfort zone, you are always going to have those people in your ear. Nehemiah did. I'm going to butcher these names, but I'm going to read them, okay? Here it is. verse 18. Verse 18, the verse I just read, Nehemiah's like, hey, he just laid it out. He was really honest. Here's what it looks like. This is bad. The people are like, that's okay. We know what we're up against. Let's rebuild the city. I'm with you. So the last part of verse 18 said, they replied at once, yes, let's rebuild the wall. So they began the good work. The very next verse, in verse 19, the naysayers show up. The Debbie Downers show up. Here they are. Verse 19. But when Sanballat and Tobiah and Geshem and Arab heard of the plan, they scoffed contemptuously. What are you doing? Have you ever had anybody ask you that question? What are you doing? Are you going to rebuild? Are you going to rebel against the king, they asked? The fact of the matter is, these guys were probably raising some serious concerns. They were probably valid. Like, this is going to be hard. You got a bunch of people that are not carpenters. You have no idea what you're going to do. How are you going to rebuild a wall? What do you think you're going to do it overnight? Like, all of this garbage, all of this stuff of people going, you're never going to get that accomplished. You're never going to make it. That's going to be really hard. People are going to attack you. And they did. They were right. They were building the wall. Read the story. It's a really cool story. Nehemiah got a bunch of people who had no earthly idea what they were doing about rebuilding a wall, and they started rebuilding the wall, and it was amazing. And then they would get attacked, so they had to shoot their arrows with one hand and work with the other. True story. Read it. It's a historical fact. These guys were raising some valid points, but I love Nehemiah's. And let me just tell you something. This is just so critical. If you don't hear this is so important. God's plans do not always make sense to us. Can I tell you that? When He asks you to do something, it doesn't make sense sometimes. To us as humans, we can't compute it because there's an upper story and there's a lower story. And God sees the upper story. We're part of the lower story. We don't always see the big picture. But He wants us to be obedient, and He's challenging us and maybe challenging you to do something. And all of your friends and all the other people are going, that's dumb. Don't do that. You're never going to be successful at that. Can you imagine? You think it made sense for Noah to build an ark? It didn't. You think it made sense for Abraham to take his only son and lay him on the altar and sacrifice him? That's stupid. Nobody does that. You think it made sense for Jonah to go to Nineveh? Even he didn't want to go. He ran the other way, got swallowed by the whale. You think it made sense for Peter to step out of a perfectly good boat onto the ocean? No, it didn't. People would look at you and go, you're an idiot. Don't step out of the boat. You're going to sink. That's logic. That's our logic. It's not God's logic. You think it made sense for a little boy to give up his lunch of 5 loaves and 2 fish and feed 5,000 people? That's idiotic. That doesn't make any sense. You think it makes sense for Moses to stretch out his staff over the Red Sea? What's that going to do, Moses? What are you going to do with that? Part the sea? You think it made sense for Ruth to stay with? It never makes sense. I can keep going, but I won't. Imagine what would have happened if these men and women would have listened to the people that were speaking negativity into their life. Imagine where we would be. In order to live forward, you will need to learn that there are going to be naysayers, and you need to learn how to deal with them. People, perhaps friends, are going to tell you that you are crazy. People that have no faith or believe in God are going to tell you not to do it. People, some are who are with you today. Some are with you and some are not, and some are actively going to maybe even try to sabotage what God is wanting to do in your life. So when you are living forward, you can expect some resistance. Let me question, how do you all deal with Debbie Downers in your life? How are you currently dealing with them? How well do you respond to negativity from others, especially when God is pulling you in a direction that he wants you to go. I absolutely, you want to see how to respond to it? Here's Nehemiah's response to those people, those guys that were probably speaking some of that stuff into his life. Here's what Nehemiah said in verse 20. Verse 20, I replied, the God of heaven will help us succeed. I know it doesn't make sense to you. I don't care. I know what God told me to do, and he's going to help us. We are his servants. We will start rebuilding this wall. But you, and I love he adds this, we're going to get it done. And I love what he asked on the end. He says, but you will have no share, legal right, or historic claim in Jerusalem. So in other words, Nehemiah said, oh yeah, you want to bet? Watch. We're going to get started. And his confidence in God was through the roof. Not only are we going to succeed, we're not going to let you have any part of it. And you're going to miss out on something amazing that God is going to do. Don't stand in my way. Confidence doesn't eliminate the pain of the process. He was confident, but it was painful. God assured them that he would help them. He didn't say that it would come without pain, and it didn't. They quite literally had to fight while they were building. People would try to raid him again, over and over. Read the story. It's a cool story. God told us he never promised us that it would happen without pain. And there was another guy that came along a little bit later, and his name was Jesus. And he told each of us the same thing. Here's what he said, John chapter 16, verse 33. I have told you that all of this so that you may have peace in me. Here on earth you will have trials and sorrows. Life is hard. But take heart, because I have overcome the world. Is your confidence in what you can accomplish moving forward, or is it in this God that you say you serve? And some of you may not be there yet, and I get that. Maybe God is just trying to get your attention. And maybe for the first time in your life, maybe he wants you to move forward into a relationship and put your faith and your life truly in him. I don't know. But you struggle with that because your friends are going to tell you that you're nuts or that you're crazy or you believe in God and you believe in Jesus and you're stupid. Let the naysayers know. We can never expect progress without some pain. Let me ask you a question real quick. What's your idea of and I think of this in context of the church because I'm your pastor and I want to try to move us into a direction and challenge each one of you to be part of this movement that God is doing, that he has been doing since the beginning of time. What's your idea of a perfect church? I don't know if you've ever thought about that. I think about it a lot. Is it the building? Is it the facility? Is it the ministries that it provides? Is it our theology? Is it our membership? Is it this service on Sunday morning that we do? Is it discipleship? Is it mission work? Is it food or hospitality or worship or parking or greeting? Or is it the coffee? What is it? What's your idea of a perfect church? If you're looking for a perfect church, if you find one, will you let me know? Because I would really, really love to figure out how they do it. But honestly, sometimes I get, and this is just, I'm just being really transparent. Sometimes I get bored with the monotony of what we do because I think God wants to do so much more in us and through us and for us. And sometimes we can get comfortable. We can just come in here and sit on the couch and cover up with the blanket and pretend we don't hear the bell. Or do you hear the bell? Do you hear that God's trying to get your attention? He wants to move you into action. He wants to move you forward. And you can experience life that is so full and rich and scary, but you feel alive. Sometimes I get bored with it, and I talk about all the time that the church is an ecclesia. It's this body, it's you, right? And so I guess when I say I get bored with the church, I get bored with you. No, I'm not. It's not true. I just get bored sometimes I just feel like God wants to do so much more through us and in us. But because of our natural bend to be comfortable, we unconsciously just become consumers of church and not contributors. We begin to look at what we can get out of it versus what we can add to it, how it meets our needs. And I'm guilty of that. We all are. And the fact of the matter is we love our own version of the dream church. But the fact is that anything short of God's dream for the church is harmful. And I want what he wants. I don't know we don't always get it right, but I know it can be painful. And I'll just wrap up with this. I know pain can produce, I know for a fact that pain can produce results. Like you walk through something painful. I've seen people come out of on the other side of things that are incredibly painful. I think kids are a perfect example of what we should look like. Because, I've got this grandson, and he's growing, and he's starting to crawl, and I would love to say that he says Poppy, but he doesn't yet. But there's this growth that happens. And, I can even, they grow up and they get bigger. I remember with our own kids, just simple tasks that they learn how to do. They learn how to swim, and they start off in the shallow end and they're just bobbing around with their floaties, but then they get a little bit more confident. They jump off the diving board, swim in the deep end. It's cool to watch that. And the fact of the matter is, it would be weird if our kids didn't grow. In fact, we would probably take them to the hospital, right? To a doctor. What's wrong with this individual? What's wrong with my child? He's not growing. Nobody wants to see an 18-year-old with a diaper sucking on a bottle, right? That's just weird. But somehow in our spiritual walk with Christ, are we growing? Are we pressing forward? Are we doing the hard things that lead us into a deeper relationship with Jesus Christ? And some of you are doing that in your experience growth. You've experienced pain in our life that creates opportunity for great growth. So Romans 8:18 says this, "Yet what we suffer now is nothing compared to the glory that God will reveal to us later." I think if we're willing to kind of step into a little bit of the uncomfortable and press ourselves a little bit, we'll experience something amazing. I would just challenge you today to don't put your growth on hold. Whatever stage of life that you're in, whether that's with your career or your job or your relationships or your understanding of who Jesus is and how he impacts your life, don't put that on hold. Don't do that. Don't convince yourself that you've earned the right to be comfortable. That's a dangerous place to live. Don't be paralyzed with the fear of the unknown. Place your trust in Jesus and allow him to do something cool. The last part of Nehemiah's story, and I'll read it. It's in Nehemiah chapter 6, verse 15. I want to give you the end of the story. Here's how it ends. I love this verse. I love that it has a date on it. It's kind of cool. It says this. On October 2nd, the wall was finished. Just 52 days after it had begun. When our enemies and the surrounding nations heard about it, they were frightened and humiliated. They realized the work had been done with the help of our God. That's the story I want for this church. It's the story of this place. I want to believe that God can do something amazing and incredible, and it's going to be painful. It's going to be difficult. But I believe wholeheartedly that the cost of doing nothing is so far greater than the cost of progress. And so I would just challenge you this morning, the reward of our action is far more rewarding than the reward of our comfort. The reward of our action is far more rewarding than the reward of our comfort. And I just want to leave you with that this morning. I want to challenge you with that. We're we're working really hard. We're meeting with the board. Just to be transparent, we're working with a consultant that are looking at the way we do church and the way we think through things and the staff that we have and everything. And our board is really committed to that process, and I'm so grateful that we have a board of people that are willing to do that and to take some risks and maybe do some things that we don't. They may not always work, but we want you to be part of this place. Part of that comes with you leaning in with us. I would invite you all to, church. I had lunch with a guy this week, and I was just talking about how church is different. He's been coming pretty regularly and has really just made a decision like, hey, I want to be a little bit more involved. Church will feel way different to you when you engage and you become part of what we're doing and help us rebuild the wall. And really what we're trying to do more than anything is just to be a church that reaches unchurched people. I don't even really care about that word so much, just people who don't know Jesus. We want to be able to model that and to share the love of Jesus and the hope of the gospel with our community. We want to be a great partner with our community. We want to be able to do things in this community that meet needs, and we do a lot of that. You guys are really faithful in that. So this morning I would just leave you with that. Lean into whatever God is challenging you to do, whether that's to maybe take a step a little bit further in your faith. Maybe it's to join a group. Cheryl just mentioned we're going to be back here in the back. I'm going to hang out over here by the coffee area. If you feel like maybe for the first time in your life, I need to get into some kind of a group, I need to get in community with other Christians and other believers and other people, meet us back here. Jeremy will be back there. Cheryl will be back there. We'd love to talk about you. If you have an idea and you're like, hey, I got a group of friends that I would love to have some help with, and I would love to just pull up on a Thursday night with those guys, and we go bowling and talk about Jesus. We don't care what that looks like, but I believe it takes a community. It takes a village to do what we want to do for the kingdom. I believe, I'm like Nehemiah, it's going to be hard. It's not easy, but I believe we can accomplish great things together. So stand with me this morning. Father, thank you so much for your goodness to us. Thank you for the story of Nehemiah. Lord, I just pray that you would help us not to be afraid of a little pain in our life. Maybe we have some naysayers in our life that we have to deal with. Maybe there's some difficulty that I'm walking through right now, whether it's a diagnosis or some kind of pain that I'm in right now. Father, I just pray that you would help us to see the growth in that pain. Help us to understand that you never waste anything and you won't waste our pain, Lord, that you will grow us as individuals and you will grow us as a church family together. Lord, I pray that you would just help us to walk out of this community, to go to the jobs and the schools and the places that we go each week. Lord, just help us not to be comfortable. Help us to be pressing forward and living forward as we seek your will for our lives. Thank you so much for this body of believers that are here who give and serve so faithfully. We love you, Lord Jesus, and in your name I pray. Amen. Hey, thanks for being here. Come back and talk to us if you want to, and we'll see you next week. Have a great week.